The Rebel Capitalist Show. Hey, so can you start off for my viewers who might not know your backstory and then your book that's just wildly popular? Can you walk us through that first?
Sure. And I'm going to simplify the backstory.
Yeah,
Because I'm a technology entrepreneur, have been all my life. Built some successful technology companies. Still today, I'm on the board of 7 different technology companies. So from that lens, I have a front seat view of how fast technology is changing the world in which we live.
hmm
And just like an entrepreneur kind of looks at a problem and then says this it's a system problem and creates a business out of a problem, essentially to deliver more value.
right.
What I realized that overall in the world, in the meta lens of the world, we had a system problem. um, and the system was technology was a stronger force than monetary policy could be. You had 2 different systems: an inflationary monetary policy colliding against technology, and technology was going to win. That fight would have disastrous consequences to our world.
Mm.
So I wrote the book called The Price of Tomorrow: Why Deflation is Key to an Abundant Future, really for my kids, because
Right.
I realized what would happen as a result of this. And then all of COVID accelerated these trends, and all of what you're seeing is it's reading like a playbook for what's happening in the world today. Technology creates a staggering amount of efficiency,
hmm
and that efficiency is deflationary. We use
Right.
technology to save our time, but that has a real profound outcome for the existing system that we've created, because the existing system is created on credit and debt.
hmm
And if you allow deflation, the entire thing unwinds to the ground. So governments are in a desperate fight all over the world to stop technological deflation from happening. And as a result of that fight, they have to concentrate all power in the state. That's what's happening. And all of the measurements that we're using for that we're measuring the system by the system. And so most people are trapped in they think housing prices go up forever, because in the last 20 years we've created $185 trillion of easing.
Right.
And so their house prices go up against that. But so we've lost the plot on what's actually really happening, and every economic calculation as a result of losing that plot is broken. But we still measure that system by the
Ba-
system.
on in nominal terms.
Exactly.
So they have a very difficult time seeing things in real terms. So why is deflation a good thing? And this is another thing that I think people really get caught up on, especially the Keynesians when they listen to them, because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when I think of deflation, I see it as 2 different types. There's one type of deflation that decreases overall demand. And that's what the Keynesians are afraid of. And unfortunately, our system is built on debt and all of this, monetary heroin that you're referring to earlier. So we have to have that increase in the money supply. We almost have to have that type of inflation. But there's another type of deflation that if we had an actual free market, that we would have as a result of productivity. And a lot of times people can, especially Keynesian economists, they conflate the two as though they're one and the same. Can you explain that?
You just nailed that. So people, when they hear Great Depression, they don't want another Great Depression, and it's
Yeah.
burned into the psyche of people. And so they conflate what caused the Great Depression, a buildup of debt that couldn't be repaid, to the Great Depression itself. And we have the same thing happening today. It's impossible to pay back the debt, so governments are monetizing the debt to try to pretend to pay it back with cheaper dollars tomorrow.
hmm
And that inflation and the inflation that they're creating as a result is polarizing society, and it will get worse. And it is against the natural force in a free market. And when you say good deflation, bad deflation, people have a hard time grappling with that. But if you think, just what does technology do? It saves your time. We could instead of dig holes with excavators, we could dig holes with spoons.
Milton
Why don't we?
Friedman.
Right.
Milton Friedman.
Right. And so people believe that the economy must have inflation to be productive, and it's exactly the opposite. It's exactly the opposite. But we live in that system, and it's a belief set. There's no physics rule that says inflation must be there to have a productive society. Productivity gains are most naturally distributed to all if you allow deflation to happen, because the free market drives price down. And when you're working on technology which is moving exponentially, and remember, most of the gains from that productivity are in front of us, not behind us. So if it took over the last 20 years, and actually now it's way a higher number, essentially $185 trillion of debt to be able to concentrate the gains to very few people out of what would naturally occur in a free market,
right?
That has to, we're on two almost compounding feedback loops. One deflationary. So what will happen? Governments are trying to raise prices on everything. As a consequence of that, any free market, any CEO must bring technology into their business to reduce labor faster. And you're on two different set, which must make the government print more money to try to solve that, which makes prices go up, which divides society. You're on two polar opposite, essentially, systems competing against each other, and the consequences are really predictable all over the world. So you see signposts everywhere.
Here's kind of an outside of the box question that I just thought of. Do you think that our economy, because I always see our economy as being way over financialized, and it's like this hot air balloon, where in my opinion, the hot air balloon should be the real economy, the production of goods and services, and then the financial economy is the basket. And I think we got it in reverse order. Do you think that the need for this constant inflation to basically bail out the government is perpetuating the financialization of the economy?
Exactly.
Okay.
So when you're saying some of this type of thing, George, you're actually you're doing the same thing. You're looking at a symptom of the root cause, and you're talking about the symptom being the financialization, when it's a natural byproduct of two different systems operating.
Right. Yeah. Because what's going to happen is people can't hold dollars. So it turns us all into speculators because we can't save money or quote unquote dollars. Because if we do, we lose the purchasing power. Jeff, I'd like to get your take on this real quick. I tried to make this, tell a story to make this really easy. And I went back and looked at, I believe it was a time just post Civil War, to before they started the Fed. In like 1912, 1913. And I looked at the average rate of inflation or deflation. And obviously back then the numbers are really hard to come by. They're kind of, you gotta piece them together. It's like Braille, but it looked like there was about 2 to 3% deflation, consumer price deflation. And I know from 1800 to 1900, prices went down by 50%. So anyway, I took about a 20-year time span there and said, okay, well, if prices went down by 2 or 3%. I looked at nominal wages and tried to piece them together. Looks like nominal wages actually went up at the same time, by about 1%. And so I did this thought experiment of a McDonald's worker today. If they started using today's prices, let's say they're making $1,500 a month, and that can just pay their bills. So at the end of the month, they have nothing left over. But over the next 20 years, we had a 1% nominal increase in their wages compounded. And then we had a 2 or 3% deflation in the costs of what they buy monthly compounded. At the end of that 20 years, it was something like their wages go up to $1,800, but the prices of the stuff that they buy goes down to $800. So they're left with a net $1,000 per month.
Yep. And all of those, so that's looking back. And if you look at the Great Deflation, right, actually in kind of the setup for a US being a free market and the innovation that came from that, it actually came on a hard money Declaration of Independence and everything else that caused productive society to actually generate wealth for all Americans. So it's actually ironic that US has lost its way and the world has lost its way on what created that created that power, created individual rights and freedoms from that power. And so if you now pull on that thread a little bit, because we're all living in a system that's doing the exact opposite, so we
Right.
can't see it.
Right.
And then we'll listen to the news and we can't see it, and they're all repeating the same thing. And people actually believe that inflation is required today for society to function. And I'd ask this, it's a really simple concept. In our lives, our rational choices, we try to get more value for less all the time. Every one of our rational choices,
Right.
we want more for less. How can you have an entire economy where every individual actor in that economy is trying to get more for less and have a system designed the exact opposite way?
Yeah. And producer trying to produce more for less.
But they have to, because citizens demand it.
Yeah, right.
Google isn't a monopoly, or Amazon isn't a monopoly as big as it is unless they were giving value to people.
Right.
And when you printing money against that, you make those monopolies bigger as a result. So every single rational actor is making their best choice in an economy that we have misinformation and money. So you must have misinformation everywhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have these two tectonic plates.
Yeah.
They're battling each other all the time. You have the prices of stuff wanting to go down because these entrepreneurs are producing things more efficiently with technology. And then the other tectonic plate of the government or the Fed, or however you want to look at it, trying to create more and more dollars circulating to chase those goods and services, to make prices go up so that they can spend more money and pay it back with devalued dollars.
And then you get a whole bunch of people in that narrative talking about hyperinflation. And then just like in 2008, there'd be hyperinflation, but technology actually drops the prices more. And that's that same thing happening. A whole bunch of people are getting suckered into thinking there's hyperinflation, and there won't. I don't believe there will be, because technology will have a corresponding effect of having to drive labor down and drive labor out, which will cause more printing, but it'll actually give the governments more room to print, because they're saying because we're focused on the wrong, we're talking about the wrong things.
Right.
It's a completely different system. And this is actually why I wrote the book, because I'm a technology entrepreneur. It's driving me crazy that people couldn't put the two and two together. They're two totally different systems. And everything I do tries to give people more value for less.
Right.
So you would think that if a lot of people were doing that same thing, and we were using, and the only way I could possibly create a winning business is if I achieve that. As an entrepreneur, here's what I think about. Once I understand a structure of something and why one has to fail, and where the market's going, I want all my energy in providing the best path to the future.
Right.
100% of my energy, not talking about the past, is best path for the future. So today we have two different systems. One, I am absolutely convinced, and nothing has proven me wrong since I wrote the book, that we will have a system that will you must have a currency that allows for deflation, or all power is concentrated in the state, and that on that path, it's likely war and revolution on the way through. So you must have a currency that's, I believe, digitally native and allows for deflation. It's a requirement for where we're moving on technology.